Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Arts and Culture Commission meeting for the month of November. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Deaver?
Here.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Lee?
Here.
Chairperson Kavanian?
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Derhovanesian is absent. The agenda for the November 15th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on November 9th, 2012.
Next item, please.
Item 2, consent items. At A, approval of regular meeting minutes from October 18th, 2012.
Just one little comment. When we have oral communications and we don't have anybody commenting or being present, I think it would be nice just to say there was no comment made at that meeting. That's how it was. I mean, last time nobody was presenting oral communications, and there is no comments made here. So just a little point that there was nobody to comment. And if there were, then obviously we mentioned the names and the subject matter. But just that little correction. And with that, I will move to approve if there is no other corrections in there.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Deaver?
Yes.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Chairperson Kavanian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 3, introductions and presentations. At A, library arts and culture events presented by Chuck White, Community Relations Manager.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Kavanian, Chair, Council, Commission members. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Just a brief presentation here today. Here we have Tropico Beauty. This is from a collection of illustrated promotional booklets available online through the library. They date back to the early 1900s, and they were booster materials for the Glendale and Tropico area, the area south of the city. They celebrated, the community, the civic life, the artistic characteristics even. Of particular interest are some of the photographs that were used by a commercial photographer in the area named Edward Weston, a very famous photographer. But his photos, he had a photo studio, and it looks to me like they paid him by making a nice little blurb about Mr. Weston and his studios in one of the brochures, but his photos are all over the place. And he had his studios from the 1910s. That's a real neat new collection that we have available online library. Brand Library. This is going to be your new front door. It's sort of between the original building and the 1969 building. It's going to be a centralized entrance that you may know about. Most of the flooring is gone now in the old mansion. They're working on the roof. Hopefully they have it done today because it's a little wet. There you can see this is the solarium, which is where the art books were if you walked in there. That's the roof. That's a very, very unique shot that I've never seen. I've never actually wanted to climb up on the roof. But we're moving along with that. Brand Library renovation. Tonight we have Flipped, an author, Wendelin Van Dranen. She's famous. The book Flipped is really quite a little gem for younger readers, and that's tonight, November 15th, 7 p.m. There was a movie made in 2010, and this actress, Madeleine Carroll, we just found out today is going to be there to talk to the kids. Of course, we have our opera talks. The last one of the year is November 17th, Opera and the Silver Screen. It's music and movies, primarily silent. In December, before your next meeting, we have an author coming who's just written a new book about peanut butter. So he says it's the first history of peanut butter, and November is National Peanut Butter Month, but he's coming. The books don't come out until the end of the month, so he's going to be there. I'm curious to see what he has to say. about peanut butter. We have a couple of holiday closures. The longest one of our year goes from the evening of November 21st on a Wednesday all the way through the long weekend. So if you can't come to the library, use our mobile app. We'll have lots of good things you can use online, including that new history of early Glendale and Tropico. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Item 4, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not on this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. Staff may refer the matter for investigation and report.
Okay, the first card I have is Nina Crow. Or is it Crow? Crow. The E at the end kind of fooled me. It made me think about it.
So yes, my name is Nina Crow. I'm the Business Development Manager for Glendale Arts. And I just wanted to talk to you and let you know about a few of our great events coming up at the Alex Theater this holiday season. As you can see, our first slide is our Holiday Pop, which is actually the second annual Holiday Pop. It's being presented by Glendale Arts and our wonderful Glendale Pops Orchestra. And it features our youth chorus, which is a 39-member all-city middle school group of kids. They audition, they've been rehearsing, they're fantastic. They're from cities, middle schools all through Glendale. And they also live in the area, so it's a really terrific representation of kids. And we're also having Danielle Sad join us, who is a longtime resident of Glendale. Her family has been here, businesses and philanthropy. She's a professionally trained musician and a wonderful singer, so she'll be joining us for a few songs. And some of the things that we're doing is offering discounts on the tickets with the code Holiday Pops. So you can either enter that online, you can do it at the Alex Theater box office, the Americana, or our GCC box office as well. The next exciting event is in January. It's on Saturday, January 19th, and Arturo Sandoval is coming to play at the Alex Theater. He is a multi-Grammy winner, wonderful man, Latin trumpeter, and he has started ASI, which is the Arturo Sandoval Institute, which will help educate youth at risk. So he's coming to the Alex Theater as a benefit concert. It's being hosted by Andy Garcia, and who is an actor and a good close friend of Arturo. And the concert will also benefit Glendale Arts and the Glendale Educational Foundation in addition to ASI. So that's a terrific event we're really excited to have at the Alex Theater. And then I don't have a slide for it, but our third of 4 concerts is in February, and it is Hits and Love Songs with a country superstar, Jody Messina. So more on that to come. And I believe Elisa Glickman, the CEO for Glendale Arts, hinted a little bit the last time she was here about the GCC box office we were working towards opening. And we did officially open that with a grant from Community Foundations of the Verdugos. So now on site at GCC in their box office, students can purchase tickets online for their events, or in person, or at the Alex Theater, or at our Americana Satellite branch office. And they're also able to buy any tickets at GC for the Alex Theater events. And so they're opposite as well. You can go to the Alex Theater to purchase tickets for GC events. So it's a great way of promoting arts across, across the multi-platforms and venues we have available in the city. So that's all done through Glendale Arts and the GCC partnership. And that is all for our seasonal holiday updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
I think getting Arturo Sandoval is really a big coup. He's phenomenal.
Yes.
I congratulate the Glendale Arts for being able to organize that. He is just he's one of the best trumpetists, both classical and jazz, that I've ever known. And I had the pleasure and honor of hosting him several years ago when I was working with the Lark Musical Society. He came in for a solo performance with an orchestra, of course, of the it's a piece called Symphony for Trumpet and Orchestra by Alexander Harutunian, and he was just phenomenal. He's absolutely great, and he's an internationally known artist, very well known, Grammy winner and many other award winners, and it's a great coup. I really am very excited about this, and I hope that the community will give him the reception that he deserves.
Thank you.
And enjoy the music that he has to offer.
Yes. And I know a lot of people from the community and outside of the community will be coming to celebrate with him as well in the music industry. The Quincy Jones, the Andy Garcia, big caliber celebrities in musical.
I'm sure he's going to be a big crowd puller, and hopefully we can publicize this the best we can, both through Glendale Arts and through our resources. And I'm sure that all the businesses and the restaurants in around Alex Theater will enjoy that evening too. So it's a great accomplishment, and I congratulate the Glendale Arts for being able to do that.
Thank you.
Ms. Cleary?
I'd also like to thank you. I'm a member of the Glendale Educational Foundation Board, and I would like to thank you for allowing them to give 25% of your proceeds to that foundation. Just want to stress that the foundation does support music in our schools, so there are a lot of children that would not have instruments otherwise, and so these proceeds, I encourage everybody to attend to not only support Glendale Arts, but also the foundation. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Abe Flores.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Abe Flores. I'm the Advocacy Field Manager with Arts for LA. And there's a packet with a bunch of information there kind of covering some of our work. I'm really just here to introduce myself, my organization, to offer assistance. We work countywide to increase support and access to the arts in schools and communities. And we're building a network of supporters. And really, we do various types of work all under the idea of advocacy, but advocacy is not just lobbying, but it's also raising awareness. It's also engaging people in community events. So we're very interested in just seeing how we could be of support of your work. We are not here to charge service or anything like that. We are all self-financed, but we just want to build that network here in Glendale and really find opportunities to support the great work that you're doing. I understand that the Commission is starting a new vision in new types of work, but we're also really focused on arts education and seeing how we could support arts in schools, music in schools. Glendale Unified School District is part of the Arts for All initiative, which is working to restore arts education into every classroom in the county, and we're very close partners with them. So our role really is to find a role for the community to support the arts inside of schools as well as communities. So just some of the work that we do, we are conveners, we convene art supporters, we convene specialists, people on policy issues, as well as we assist in promoting and raising awareness of the importance of the arts in communities, as well as highlighting great work that's happening throughout the county. We have relationships with different media outlets, and we're really just trying to find those great stories. And finally, we do also assist in mobilizing and educating the constituents and the work and investment of the arts in communities. So I'm really just here just to introduce myself. Here's a bunch of material that we do, and encourage any of the commissioners to reach out to me. I would love to sit down one-on-one and just talk details, see how I could just be of service. Thank you very much.
Sure. Wonderful. Commissioner Deaver?
I just want to thank you for coming forth. I'm very familiar with the work that you do and have been at different events that you've convened, and they've all been fantastic. And I think you've just really been raising the profile of the arts and really connecting with the community countywide to do some really phenomenal things. And I think that any opportunity that we can have to work with you to advance your goals and vice versa, I think is really important. And I for one, would love to sit down with you and chat with you at some point.
Fantastic. My email, my card's right there. I would love to sit down. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. And the last card I have here, I love it. It just says Sheehan. It's Michael Sheehan.
Put my card out to use this. But many of you, hello, my name is Michael Sheehan. I'm an advocate for the arts and the wonderfulness of South Glendale, Adams Hill. But some of you will have received today a forward from me from Arts for LA about some
great coup that you had with the LA Unified School District. School board
Policy.
or curriculum. And the core curriculum for all of us should understand that the foundation of everything that we do has a lot of building blocks. And so I'm here, as you know, generally to just advocate for getting more art into Glendale. So when I put unsure on my card, I just decided I was going to come today, having no idea that the hard work that you guys have done to come up with a policy that I think might have started sometime in the early 2000s is finally together. And certainly there are a lot of hoops to jump through from the brief perusal of this document that I've taken a look at. But I'm here to hope that my voice goes out to people who want to put art into public spaces in the city of Glendale, and specifically the gas station, which has a lot of rules, which will be fun to break. And so I'm here to advocate for that, breaking the rules, and to get art into public spaces. I went to a meeting of the Glendale Art Association last night, and there are artists within the Glendale Art Association who have ideas and have had for months for putting more art into the gas station. And so with this document as a guideline, Dick Heimbold, with whom you're all familiar and who works really hard on behalf of the Glendale Art Association and the City of Glendale for Arts, has some ideas, and I would second them, and he'll probably bring them to you himself. Currently, he's trying to get into Le Massinier Park to have a paint out here in December, and so I would lobby on his behalf for that to Lisa. And I was here to give Arlette a bad time because she was all in favor of doing something with the July 4th exhibit, and I wrote her copious notes, though I have not sent flowers, asking if she had any ideas, and I never heard back from her. And Razmik assured me that she was sincere in her enthusiasm, and Carrie's been very forthcoming. And so, Arlette, where are you? I need to give you a bad time. So,
is this why she's absent today?
No.
She knew that I would be here. I didn't know I would be here until I got up this morning.
Okay.
I couldn't remember if this was the third Thursday or not, so you can see how together I am. So basically, I want to thank you for something that I didn't know I was going to be thanking you for, and to let you know that I'm still available to help, and given the opportunity, I shall. Bye.
Questions, comments? Well, that's exactly what we need in this community, actually, Mr. Sheehan, is people to go and start knocking on other people's doors and saying, hey, you're an artist, get out, get your ideas out, tell people, talk to people.
Well, this document, I think, will be a good guideline.
Absolutely.
So now if 4 years have to go by before we actually implement it, I'll be very old by then. And something I hadn't thought about. There are lots of empty storefronts in the city of Glendale. I, as an individual, don't have any clout whatsoever with the people whose numbers are in the windows of these shops up in Kenneth Village. There's one little store down in Adams Hill and right across from the park. And so if there's any way to use the good offices of the city and of the art and culture department. I didn't know we actually had a department. We do have a department? We do. Okay. So it's Library Arts and Culture Department. Okay. But anyway, if we can use the clout that the whole city has, it has a lot more oomph than just my coming and knocking on somebody's door. And so if there's a way I can help with that, I'll be happy to do that too.
I'm not quite sure what you are suggesting, Mr. Sheehan.
I'm sorry, Razmik?
I'm not quite sure what you are suggesting.
I am suggesting that you, Razmik Gregorian, go to all of the open storefronts in the city of Glendale one by one and ask them if they would be willing to put up a pop-up gallery featuring artwork from local artists or artists further away who would come in, take over the storefront as it is, and volunteer to pay for electricity or utilities, which would be fair, and for them then to have an occupied space for a limited amount of time, probably no more than 2 weeks or a month.
I'm sure you are aware of our GATE program, which is something similar to this.
Which I thought sucked, actually. I got no response from them when I tried to communicate with them.
Which
so
one?
yes, I am.
The GATE program?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not quite sure what your communication with whoever is responsible for GATE program has been, and that is also in work in progress and in transition. But that the idea that you have overall, as in principle and general, is a good idea.
Of course.
And we have been working on this, and we will hopefully have another policy implemented like the one that we are doing now. But you really have to understand one major difference between what we are doing, art in public places, and the empty storefronts. You know, with art in public places, we are dealing with city and public properties and our entities. So Parks and Rec, Library and Arts and Culture, it's very easy for them to cooperate, but most of these storefronts are privately owned, and it has a lot of drawbacks when we want to work with private entities. Not that we will not, and we will encourage them to do it. And in our retreat, we discussed to cooperate with most of these private business people and entities to, again, have a cooperation and do that. But again, I want you to understand that this is a work in progress, and it's
All
not.
we have to do is get one. Just one.
We are not ignoring that idea, but it is not.
If I may interject, I don't want to continue on this topic. We need to kind of wrap it up because we're starting to discuss items that are coming up here in the agenda.
That's good. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that's a good idea. We have been doing it in the past, and we are looking for avenues to do it in the future also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment.
Yes. Of course.
Just one quick comment on that, Mr. Sheehan, as well. If you stay for our meeting, I believe it's item 5B, it's a report from staff that kind of goes over a little bit of what we've been starting to discuss in our retreat that Commissioner Gregorian had mentioned. And so you can get a sense of the types of things as we're starting to prioritize in terms of how we think we can help advocate and smooth the way for certain things to happen in Glendale and what needs to be done to do that, what our priorities as a commission would be. But also going back to the comment that came in earlier, that it's important for all of our community members and artists that if they have great ideas to work together in the private sector to figure out coalitions to go forth and move projects forward. And that's really what we are as a body, is to be able to say, you know, we think that's great and help you as we can, but the activity of that needs to happen within the community, and that's what we're hoping to be able to bolster through through our strategic planning process that we're in the process of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Next item, please.
Item 5, business agenda, action items. Review and approve temporary art display and community services and parks facilities policy.
Last month at the October Arts and Culture Commission meeting, the commissioners provided feedback to staff regarding the policy. We have addressed a lot of those comments in the policy that is attached. I'm going to go through some of the items or some of the major concerns that you came up with. I'll give you a brief summary and then I'll walk you through the revisions in the policy. And then we also have staff available as well as Steve Martin, who will be able to answer some questions regarding the insurance, which I know you're going to have many questions, but bear with me as I walk through this with you. One of the concerns was the facilities and the spaces or lack thereof that were identified. Teresa Alexanian and I visited the spaces minus the Adams Square gas station and Brand Studios, which is currently closed for renovation, just to see if we could identify additional spaces and to make sure that the dimensions that were previously provided by some of the staff in the community centers was accurate. So we were actually able to include additional spaces, but also expand the spaces. So I think originally they had said, oh, we could only accommodate 3 by 3, but if we looked again, it's 10 feet by 10 feet, which is, a lot more space. So that, all of those facilities and some of the areas are included in the staff report. You'll notice the ARC, we have 7 spaces total. Maple Park, we added an additional space. Same with Spar Heights. The other question was whether or not we could just include these spaces, the facilities and the call for artists as opposed to the policy. So we are going to include the available facilities and spaces in the call for artists. So every time we add or remove a space, we don't have to come back and revise the policy. The second question was the commission hosting artist receptions, what the cost would be associated with that. And speaking with community services and park staff, they are willing to waive the rental fee for commission-hosted receptions and waive the fee for staffing if the event is held during their normal hours. If not, then we have to pay for the additional staff. And the budget that I gave you is on the high end, which is about $800 a year for that staffing. And that's taking into consideration if we were to do 2 receptions at 3 hours each at every single facility. So, one night we hold something at every single facility. So I wanted to give you what the high end would be. But of course, it would be much lower if we only held 1 reception and we selected 1 location. So that gives you an idea. The other is the insurance. I looked, actually Yvonne and I looked into the policies that other cities have for similar programs or policies. So some cities have, a temporary display either in City Hall or an artist loan program where the city borrows the art and puts it up. And all of the cities that we looked into, except for Santa Barbara County, actually required the artist to get the liability coverage. And that's to protect the artist mostly from any lawsuits. So if somebody's walking by artwork and it falls on somebody, then it would protect the artist, both their artwork as well as the liability on that. So if you want an idea of some of the cities that I contacted, they were Pasadena, Linwood, Berkeley, Ventura, Collin County, and Whittier. And just to walk you through the changes in the policy, on the first page, acceptable media, we expanded the definition of 2-dimensional art per the Commission's request. Under the proposal requirements, there were requests just to change the wording for items 3, 4, and 5. We've also added one new bullet point, which would be that the statement that the artist will obtain public liability insurance, just so they know that they're going to have to accept that, so it's not something that's dropped on them at the last minute. On page 3, under the selection committee, staff chose to limit based on a lot of the comments from the commission, to limit the committee to 3 people, but we would allow for community comments at the call for artists. So we would let community members know that they can come and provide any comments that they have or opinions or feedback about the type of art that they would like to see in the facility near their home. Under the selection criteria, we did eliminate the historical prominence criterion at the suggestion of the commission. And on page 4, under the exhibition guidelines, we did provide additional clarification on the copyright ownership of the art. And the exhibition time limits, we did provide a minimum and maximum, but these limits can be clarified in the call for artists again at the commission's request. And finally, on page 5, removal of artwork. I think there was a request just to add that the artist or the exhibitor could also request to remove their art, and that wasn't previously included. That concludes the changes, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Teresa from Parks is here, and so is Steve Marney. He's available to answer questions about the insurance.
Anyone with questions, comments? I see a lot of writing on Commissioner Deaver's paperwork. So
No, it's not that bad at all.
I'm guessing.
Notorious.
I'm cheating. I always look over to Commissioner Deaver for answers to questions.
Actually, yeah, I do have a couple quick questions. We note in here that excuse me, that we will give. that will give preference to local artists, but it's not included necessarily in the criteria. Does that not need to be?
I think I think discuss it at the staff level. We can just include that when we're reviewing the proposal. And also, I forgot to mention, I do have pictures of the facilities and the spaces if you want to take a look at them. I mean, I can just go through them very quickly, but if you want, I can also email it to the commission after the meeting, if whatever you prefer.
It'd be great to see if it's not trouble.
No, not at all. I can just go through them with you so you can, match it up to what is in the report. So I apologize for some of the pictures. I just took them with my phone, and I guess the flash was not on. But it gives you an idea of where some of these spaces are. So at the ARC, we identified 6 wall spaces that are identical, and this is the hallway leading you into the main community room. So that's one side. So you'll see that there's 3 panels, and they're about 7 by 6 feet long. This is the other wall. Another area. This is right near the lobby entrance, and it's a much bigger and nicer space than what I captured. Sorry, we were on a time crunch, so I just wanted to try and get the pictures just so you could see that the spaces were a lot bigger than what we had led you to believe at the last meeting. At Maple Park, we had this beautiful, it's cement block wall, but it can accommodate art. If we do use one of the cable systems and wall mounting, we can just put it up on the ceiling and hang it. And this is a large space in the lobby area. This is, again, in the lobby area, but it's right above. So if you're coming in, I think through the south entrance, that's the first thing that you would see. And then there's also display shelves, which are a little bit smaller, but they can accommodate smaller 3-dimensional art or some types of 2-dimensional art. At Pacific Park Community Center, the one space that we identified is right at the reception desk and the wall behind that reception desk. A lot of the other spaces are not either right next to an exit or fire alarm, or right next to a water fountain, which wouldn't really be conducive for hanging art. So this was probably one of the best spaces. This is what people see when they first walk into the community center in the library. Spar Heights Community Center, again, a large wall in the lobby entrance that we thought would be a good space to hang art. And of course, some of these items will be moved to accommodate for the art, but we didn't move them for the pictures. And then this is another space at Spar Heights Community Center. This is the lounge area. So this is, again, a very long wall that could accommodate a lot of different types of art. And that is it. If you have any questions, again, we're available to answer. And I think you had questions, Terry.
I had one other question on page 4, where you did make the change about the photographing for promotional work of the artist, and that they retain the copyright. But will there be an agreement or something that where there's like a release of being able to use those photographs, but that the artist is given credit in any promotional? So, like if it's in online or in a written or in a leaflet or something, that it's
that's something we can include in the contract that the artist signs.
Okay. That's really, I mean, we talked about the insurance kind of ad nauseum last time, and I know for myself, it's still, I look at that even as I look at it again and go, wow, as a non-professional artist myself, that would maybe, and others that I know, that seems like a lot of money maybe potentially have to put out. And so to the extent that we can continue to explore ways of reducing that cost, or if we learn over time that, maybe that there are just other avenues, whether it's the umbrella or if it's artists coming together and pooling some way for the entire year, as opposed to an individual artist has one art thing that they have to put up, having to pay for that individually. I don't have any specific questions about that, I guess, but I still have some concerns about the public good that's being given for this, and the cost associated for artists who might not be at that level where they already maintain some sort of ongoing insurance for their public installations and such.
I had one simple question. On page 3, under selection criteria, the second bullet point is for safety. Was that language specific to this policy, or is it what other cities also write in their policies?
I think this is something that's pretty standard. I think we're looking at a couple of other policies. This was included. I think we want to make sure that it's nothing that's going to, has sharp edges. So if somebody accidentally walks into them, so that it doesn't pose that type of a threat, or it doesn't create that hostile environment. So it's pretty consistent.
Just funny to me. Sorry. Again, when you look at things like this from an artist's perspective, some of the things like just jump out at you as being kind of funny. So, like safety, I could never imagine like an artwork having to deal with. I mean, unless it's made out of knives and things, or I don't know. But yeah, I guess there's crazy artists out there, right? So you never know.
Aren't all the artists crazy?
Sometimes.
In a good way, sometimes?
I'd like to think I'm fairly normal, at least in public settings.
Okay.
Should I?
Any other questions or comments?
Should I make a motion to?
I need to make a few comments, please.
Sure. Well, you can still make the motion. Of course.
We'll wait.
Okay.
Last time we discussed, first of all, those new areas are much better than last time, so it's a great improvement. I appreciate you guys going back and revising and doing what you did. Still, hopefully, we will have more spaces, both in the very same facilities and other facilities that will open, brand studios and the Pacific Park. I think that we should have places in there, and hopefully even in Maple Community Center. I think they should have more space for us than what we have. But anyway, this is a great improvement from what we had last time, so I appreciate that. Last time we discussed sculpture. I think you have still left that out. And sculpture doesn't need wall space, it needs floor space. So I'm not quite sure how we are going to handle that. But I think the commissioners mostly, if not unanimously, wanted to see sculpture also included in there. So I'm not quite sure what we are doing on that. Then on the artwork guidelines, on the first paragraph, we say, I think the revision is good. It's better than what we had last time. But still it says, therefore the artwork must be suitable for all ages. And I am not quite sure why we even have to include that in there. If all the other criteria that we have, like complying with the penal codes and whatever else we have in here, if we do that, suitability for all ages is too broad and too vague to be able to put as a criteria. And I'm not quite sure if something that will appeal to a middle-aged person would really appeal to a younger kid or vice versa. So I'm not quite sure if we should really include that in there or not. Then we discussed also last time that 6 to 12 months. We even said that why not consider 3 months and give opportunity to more artists. So I would like to see that 3 months to be added in there also, a minimum of 3 months, maybe average 6 months and maximum 12 months or something like that. I think in addition to that, there was another thing here. Yeah. And also on page 4, you have for all facilities, almost in the middle of the page that we have in here, responsibility of the exhibitor. On this, after the 2 bullet points, it says for all facilities that can hang artwork, etc. On the 4th line, we say, should the artwork require framing, the artwork must be framed with plexiglass. Actually, that's not really possible. Many artworks and paintings might need framing, will be much better than framing, but they might not need any glass or plexiglass. So I think we should really clarify this, or at least it should be clear for us, that if an artwork needs some kind of a transparent cover, like glass, then it should be plexiglass. We shouldn't really say that any framing has to have that, because there are many nice artwork in frames that do not need that. And also on the page 5, removal, the installation of artwork, the second paragraph, third line, it says the exhibitor must not remove the art without a scheduled appointment. And I would like to probably add, and I'm not quite sure what my colleagues would feel about this, it should read as the exhibitor must not remove the artwork without a scheduled appointment and presence of an authorized staff. I think it is important that our staff are present and know how and when and how safely these artwork are being removed. So that will conclude my comments this time, which is much, much briefer than last time. But I would really like to hear from our Mr. I'm not quite sure what
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin, yeah.
He can come and address. I just wanted to address some of your comments you had, Commissioner Gregorian.
Sure.
So in the acceptable media, we did not include sculptures because when we tour the facilities, none of the facilities can accommodate a sculpture except for Adams Square. That's why Adams Square is left as an exception. So when we decided when we expand the policy to other facilities that can accommodate three-dimensional sculptures, at that time we felt that if we did include it at this time, it would create a lot of confusion because the facilities can't accommodate. They're in hallways where there's people walking through. So I did hear the comment from the commission. It's just these facilities can't except for Adams Square.
So instead of us coming back and spending a lot of time on revising this or reviewing this, why not adding sculpture here and then leave to the request for artists or to that committee who is going to decide whether we can put it in there or not. If in the future we have floor space, the policy is already here, we don't have to review it. If we don't have any space, then respectfully we will decline to take any sculpture that is not suitable for the areas that we have in mind.
Well,
my concern is that right now, with this, we are excluding a very important and good art form. And I don't think we should do that. And maybe whoever applies for a sculpture, maybe we can direct the committee to place that sculpture in Adams facilities. Adams Park or whatever.
If I understand correctly, this would be taken care of through the RFP program, the RFP process anyway.
Exactly. So that's why we should not exclude sculpture, but we should leave to the committee to decide where they want to put that piece of sculpture.
Did this play into the insurance estimates that were given, that we were looking at two-dimensional only at this phase?
I'm looking at Teresa. I'm not sure. Not exactly sure.
Teresa Alexanian with Community Services and Parks. Commissioner Deaver, I'm not exactly sure if the sculpture, the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, would make a price difference on the pricing for the insurance, because, again, it depends on if we're going through the individual artist or if the city's buying a policy. So I think it would depend on the type of insurance, but I personally can't say that the quote would make, if there would be a difference in pricing if we included sculptures at this time.
But the estimates we did have from the former risk manager included only the two-dimensional art that would be hung up on the wall. It didn't include the sculpture, so we can look at it and see if it's appropriate to include the sculptures in this policy or and just for the call for artists when we finalize it.
Another question regarding the sculpture, that there are some display cases that were available. Would they be appropriate for small types of three-dimensional art, for instance?
Yes, and that we felt like we could specify that specific space that would be able to accommodate smaller three-dimensional art, because there's shelving, so we could move the shelving to make it a little bit taller, but that's the only space, except for Adams Square, that would accommodate, so we felt that we could include that in the call for artists, that the specific facilities can accommodate the sculpture. So at this point, it's not that we're striking out and saying no sculptures are allowed. We'll be able to have that flexibility in the call for artists. So should a new facility come up that can accommodate that sculpture, we can then include it in the call for artists.
In these display boxes that you showed, I believe in Spar Heights, they have a depth. And I don't know what it is, but probably at least 3 or 4 inches depth. And I'm sure in many of the exhibitions that I've gone, I've seen a lot of smaller sculptures or pieces of art that might be able to even, they might be possible to accommodate in those areas. So again, in whichever way I look at it, I think this kind of is excluding sculpture, and I do not really want that to happen. I think we should include that and say that sculpture is also accepted, and then based on our facilities, on our panel, on our committee, then they will decide what they want to do with the proposed piece of art.
Are there any commission comments regarding that item?
If I may, I seem to recall that we kind of tabled it knowing that we could go back, that it was easier at the time for whatever reason, whether it was insurance or some other reason, that we would go back later and revise as necessary. I do agree with my fellow commissioner to the extent that we can make this document as fluid as possible and be as more defined in the call for artists is probably a better working policy document in general. So I'm not caught up really on the sculpture piece so much as if there's a way of saying that doesn't hinder our process in some way or can be confusing, to be able to say acceptable media is relevant to the call for artists and the spaces available. Two-dimensional arts may include, three-dimensional arts may include, something along those lines. It just seems like working policy documents tend to be better if they can be broad, if we can define it more specifically for our call for artists.
Okay.
I'm actually on the same page with Commissioner Deaver. I agree 100% with that.
Okay, we can review it and finalize when we finalize the policy. On page 2, I think Commissioner Gregorian had a comment about the artwork guidelines and that the statement, therefore, the artwork must be suitable for all ages. That's something that I think our attorney, Michael Grant, felt that needs to be included in this, but I think we had to be as vague as possible so that any artwork that is in a facility has to be suitable for all ages. I don't know if other city attorneys want to expand on that. Mr. Grant isn't here today, but that is something he wanted included.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Mike Garcia, city attorney, and Mike did work on this, and we actually talked about this provision, and it's similar to provisions in other policies, and it's a standard that's been upheld as compared to putting in a standard that's maybe something that's offensive or using those types of words which have been struck down. Because you're looking at the audience from an age perspective, from a child perspective, the courts have upheld that as permissible to use that as a standard to say whatever it is, it has to be suitable. If it's open to the public, it has to be suitable for all ages. That way, you're addressing that particular concern in a way that's legal. So that's why the language is written that way.
In most cases that's true, but in art, creativity, that sometimes may not fit for a very simple reason, because people's perceptions of things are different. Somebody might look at a nude photograph and see a piece of art with the lighting and the whatever, and somebody might look at it with their own beliefs and look at it as quite offensive. So where do we draw the line?
And again, that's why we use that language as opposed to saying that something that's offensive.
Offensive to who?
Well, it's something that would be inappropriate for children. I mean, and that's a standard that's used in FCC world in terms of regulation of airwaves and those types of things. So I would submit that a nude photo might not be appropriate for children, and so that's why, and that language has been upheld in other contexts, and I think that's why Mr. Grant put it in there.
May I ask a question at that point? I understand, because this isn't a gallery, it's a public institution, and so I understand the sensitivities. And it would tend to align on that side, because to me, all ages does sound more like, use your common sense. You don't want something out there that's going to be terribly offensive to somebody, as opposed to needing to appeal to a 3-year-old. You just don't want to enter into conversations. However, in argument, I would say that many of our classical Michelangelo's, there are things we're looking at it, so it's more of a socially acceptable form as thinking of it as being not offensive. So that's, to me, I guess, where the gray line would be, and if that may fall to the committee to discern when something is submitted, but it gives some guidelines for artists to understand. If they try to put something out there that's too terribly cutting edge and making a point, it will probably be voted down because it's not appropriate for a city to be displaying. But there might be some ability for the committee to say that something else is less offensive.
And that's the intent here. Again, the problem with guidelines such as these is that they have to provide enough direction to the decision maker so they can say, this is what I relied upon, but not be so definitive, because you can't plan for every particular type of scenario, especially, as you said, with art, which varies in many different forms and contexts.
Mr. Grant, I understand this whole point, and I'm sure we can. This argument not is only on this platform today, but it has been going on forever in the art world and in the creative world. If somebody wants to, let's say, display the statue of David in one of our city's facilities, would that be suitable for children? It has frontal nudity of a male, whoever, right?
Correct.
So the point is, what I'm trying to say is, this is very, very subjective. And if we want to be very sensitive, in art world, if we want to be sensitive with everyone who gets offended, then we won't create.
Well, and
sometimes people need to get offended to move forward and to learn from this experience. And when I say offended, I don't really mean in a nasty way. But a creative mind is not responsible for who will get offended by it. But a creative mind has to create and has to elevate the art world and the art. So basically what I'm trying to say, again, is not rhetoric, is not anything, but I'm very concerned about being accused of censorship and being accused of not allowing an artist to express the way they want to express.
I certainly understand, and we're sensitive to that too, and that's why a lot of the language that could be construed in many different ways we tried to eliminate, but we try to put some floor, if you will, to allow whoever is deciding what goes in there, to allow them to decide, okay, something is going to be harmful to children or inappropriate for children, because otherwise, without it, then you don't have anything to base a denial on. And that's my concern. Something will be, in our community's eyes, offensive to the point where it's either obscene or some other type of, and we won't have any particular standard to regulate that.
So
again, hold on. We can't regulate something that just because it's offensive or controversial, because those terms they're like as you alluded to, very difficult to define and mean different things to different people. But in our view, from the legal perspective, this does provide some guidance to the decision makers to make their decision.
In our society in Glendale, we have so many different diverse cultures, ethnic groups, religions, all kinds of things living here, and I love that. One of the reasons I live in Glendale is because of that richness of that diversity. But something which might be good for me might not be good for my neighbor. Something which might be good for one religion is not good for another religion. And again, statue of David, will we allow that to be displayed or not? And that's the bottom line. And, the whole world thinks that's a masterpiece.
Right.
And somebody might look at it and say, what is this, nudity? And so what I'm trying to, again, get to is, I don't think this is some kind of a trap that we are getting ourselves into, because we are trying to have the least common denominator between everybody, and when you get to the least common denominator, it's really very weak and, very, how do you say, watery. That wouldn't have substance. So I'm trying to avoid that. Again, I understand the sensitivities. I understand the different cultural reactions to different issues. Not even cultural, different people. Me and my sister might look at something and to have a completely different perception of it. I understand that, but I don't think that gives us the right to ask the artists to do something which will limit their creativity. That's basically what I'm saying. And I think this paragraph does that.
And if I may, Commissioner Gregorian, my only concern, again, is having the tools for the city to be able to, I don't want to say judge the art by, but compare the art to, in terms of what legally we can say yes or no to. If you don't have this in there, then I think because what we're doing here is we're opening a public forum, a limited public forum, and so I think you have the right to do this, to put a provision in here like this. But to the extent you don't, then you also, the concern I have, the potential threat there is that a court could say you've opened up a public forum, a truly public forum, where we can't impose any type of restriction. And so what I'm trying to do is just balance the two, and that's why we put that in there. And let me say, I understand your concerns. This is like one of the thorniest issues that as city attorneys we deal with, trying to deal with these issues that have interplay with free speech and First Amendment issues. And so I'm certainly sensitive to where you're coming from.
Commissioner Lee?
I think the simplest way to put it is the right thing for the right place. This is going into a public place. If you're talking about an art exhibit in an art show in a private place, then I would agree with you 100%. Now we're putting something in a public place where everybody has access. If forethought, knowing the Statue of David would be in an art studio, people who have kids that are going to be sensitive to it, they won't bring their kids there. Now, seeing that this is a public recreation centers and places like that, sometimes you want your kids to go play, but then you're going to restrict yourself in saying, hey, I can't bring my kid to go there because I don't agree with that artwork. That's the flip side to it. So my recommendation is to leave it that way, because those type of artwork, if it becomes controversial, I would prefer it to be in a private studio. Because why do you want to subject the entire city to something that could have a big backlash? Why take a chance? That's the way I would look at it. Not to obstruct the artists at all. Artists can be creative and do. It's just right place for the right item. Is not, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand what you are saying, but I don't necessarily agree with you. It's just, the point is, again, there are, if you go to any city in Europe, and I'm sure you've been there, most of the artwork and most of the sculpture around includes human bodies, quite often nude. And these are the most public places next to, anywhere, kindergartens, supermarkets, anywhere you go. Everywhere, and, it is just, what I'm trying to say is, this is just an attitude. This is just a perception. And the more we try to shield everything from everything, the more we get stuck into that swamp of old thinking. We really have to have new ideas, and we really have to have open minds. And if somebody has a very limited mind of thinking that, let's say, Statue of David is offensive, by not showing it to them, you are helping them to be in that very limited mindset. Why not try to break these barriers and try to keep as much open mind as possible? And again, nobody on this room or on this planet will disagree that Statue of David is a masterpiece of art. So, what are we trying to do in here? And again, I don't really want to make a big federal case out of this issue. I understand what we are doing, and I'm sure the committee will, be very sensitive to all of these issues. But I'm trying to discuss a principle here. And the principle is, art is to open people's minds, to give them food for soul and, whatever else, and to elevate everybody's life. We cannot limit that, and an artist who creates that, who has this extra ability, we cannot limit that creativity. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Ms. Cleary, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just want to offer my perspective. I'm certainly, as a library professional, an advocate of the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and I totally agree with your principles. But as a manager of both a professional gallery and a community space, I have to chime in here. In a professional gallery, at the Brand Gallery, we've had many exhibits that had very controversial subjects. We did one exhibit that was about women's issues, and it gave very graphic depictions of rape and very graphic depictions of things that perhaps I wouldn't want my 2-year-old to see. And so in those kind of exhibits, we always put a disclaimer, as many museums do, saying, there may be material in this exhibit that are offensive, to your children or others. It's your choice whether you walk in or not. At the Central Library, I feel like I need this kind of language to help me guide the kinds of things that go into a big, cavernous, open space that you really, I wouldn't, as a mother of a 2-year-old, would have no control over whether I can bring that person in the space or not. I just all of a sudden come upon this. So I think the purpose of the language is to help us, as Mr. Garcia said, not manage the audience, but be aware of the audience in a community space versus a professional gallery. I was the gallery director for 10 years at Brand Gallery, and there was nothing that would come between me and the artist in terms of what they could and could not put into that gallery, and I would defend it to the hilt. But in a community space, such as a library or a park facility, we need to think about the audience. And what I'm thinking about primarily when I make decisions about what goes into the Central Library is the mother with the 2-year-old or the 5-year-old that doesn't want to be. So, yes, the Statue of David, I would gladly put into the library, but an exhibit like I just described at Brand Library, I probably wouldn't. But I would certainly allow it in a professional gallery where people would be given that disclaimer and the opportunity to say, no, I'd rather not see that. So I think, and I, once again, I'm not arguing with your principle. I 100% agree with it, but we have to think of the audience.
Well, we seem to agree on most of the principles. The only thing that I see a subject of discussion here or disagreement is, this phrase, suitable for all ages. I really don't think that is necessary in there. And I'm sure with all your considerations that you said about the 2-year-old and the public spaces and all that, I'm sure the committee will come up with something which would fit all of that. But I don't want this to be part of our policy. The way in black and white that, look, it has to be suitable for all ages. Let the committee decide what would be fit for that area. And I'm sure the committee would be very sensitive to all these sensitivities that you just described. And I am very sensitive to that too, by the way. I agree with you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, and actually that's really my point. My point is that the committee won't be able to take those sensitivities into account if you don't put it in the policy. If you don't put in the policy and you don't give that direction to the committee, they will be without the legal authority to do that. And so they will still have flexibility, but if you don't put it in there, they won't have the flexibility then to consider those issues, and that's what I'm suggesting. So with that, I'll leave it to you.
I just want to make one final comment, and I kind of want to put this to rest, because I think we've all had a chance to speak on this.
Yeah, we spoke.
But number one, I think artists will apply anyway. Regardless, they will apply. Regardless if it says it's only allowed, art is only for 5-year-olds. An artist who is painting the Statue of David will be, through an RFP process, come into play. Number two, it comes to the idea of public versus private area. And we had similar issues with the MIM event, where what we did was to solve this issue, we had a disclaimer and that was kind of it. The other thing
Isn't that a landmark thing that we had, and we had to cross that?
Absolutely, I agree with you, but it was it was a private, not a. I mean,
It wasn't a private.
It's a private space.
it was a controlled space, and we did have a disclaimer. We can't have a disclaimer in front of every library in the city or every public space in the city. As much as I agree with you, I do, because I'm an artist, and sometimes
And you speak against it?
Well, yeah, because and I'll tell you why. And that's my third item, is that you brought up Europe and the culture and mindset. When I was in Salzburg, there's a humongous park in the middle of town, and there's all kinds of nude statues everywhere, and that's just part of their culture. In America, we don't have that here. Everything is covered up and made okay for kids and made okay for this and that, which is not wrong. It's just different. That's just the way that they did it in Europe, and that's just the way we do it here. And I mean, like, you can imagine in my head how much there's like an argument of both sides, and both sides want to win. But at the end of the day, it comes to, in Europe, they wouldn't have that language. You know why? Because there's that common sense aspect. When they do give something to a subcommittee, they already assume that they're going to do that. But here, we can't do that. This is a policy. We have to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. So that's really the issue. See, in Europe, you wouldn't have language like this. They wouldn't need to say that suitable for all ages. They don't do that there. They already assume. They already make sure that people are just going to do the right thing. But that's just. Actually, we can't. We can't do that, Mr. Sheehan. Well, well, we can't. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. You can fill out a card next time, Mr. Sheehan, and you can make a comment. But yes, I'm sorry. That's really the bottom line, is that we simply just have to put wording in a document so that people can make the right decision. That's simply what it comes down to. I mean, for me, I don't need to see that in a document for me to make the right decision and in my mind, if I'm putting something in a public space, obviously I'm going to think about the 5-year-old, the 2-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 70-year-old who are going to walk through that space. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's just wording, and for as insulting as it can be to artists, or has the potential to be, for me, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I just like to see this move on at this point, because we're just going to sit here and spin the wheels.
Well, in an effort to dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's, I just want to get through and address Commissioner Gregorian's, just give you a promotion, comments, so we can finalize this, and should you move to approve it, then at least I can incorporate all the comments provided today, and this policy will be adopted. On page 4, under the responsibility of the exhibitor, I think last time we clarified that section a little bit more, but I guess not enough, because I think last time we said, well, not everything needs to be framed, so we can just clarify that to say that if it requires framing and if it requires some sort of protective covering, that it be plexiglass. And then the exhibit time limits, I think we left it at 6 months, just in terms of the staffing and how often we can do it. But if the commission wants, we can, change it to 3 months and assess it every year as we develop our work plan and really figure out how often we could do it. And your comment, under the section for removal of artwork, we can include, to make sure that there's an authorized staff person. So I think I have everybody else's comments, so unless you have additional comments, then I have everything that I need to finalize this, along with Teresa and Community Services and Parks, so we can have this policy approved. But Steve is still here. Mr. Martin is still here if you would like to ask him any questions about the insurance.
Are there any questions about the insurance?
We had some. I thought you already knew the questions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Steve Martin. I'm the Safety Administrator for the city. I didn't really have anything prepared. I was just here for questions. I think the key point on this is, what most of the other agencies are doing with Ms. Vartadian's research. I mean, this is a very common practice. It's needed. We subsequently met with the city attorney's office and revisited the issue, and it really needs to stay in the policy.
Can I?
Of course, Mr. Gregorian.
The problems that we had last time were several. One of them was we need a liability insurance of $1 million for the artists to display their art and whatever there is. And also, that seems to be overly excessive, especially in these situations, because I understand that once in a while, one in a million, maybe something might happen. But I don't really see why an artist who is displaying, let's say, a piece of painting on a wall needs to have $1 million liability insurance. That's the first question. The second question was, I was under the impression that the city up to a point is kind of self-insured, so why can't we use that? And there were several questions. If I knew that you would be here without watching our last meeting, I would have probably prepared it better. So I'm sorry about that. But this $1 million seems extremely excessive. And in the policy, we say some of the artwork that the artist is going to display is going to cost him or her between $100 to $500 per installation. Why would an artist pay a $500, a maximum according to this document, to display his or her art somewhere that is doing a community service as a volunteer? So, basically, I do understand insurance, and I do understand what the concept and the philosophy behind it is. The thing that I'm trying to find is ways not to burden the artists who are already burdened by this economy, by, a lot of other financial issues. Why do we have to burden them with $500 to display their art for 6 months on a wall? I don't understand that.
Well, not just this program, but all programs and goods and services we do require insurance on.
And that's a sensible thing to do, by the way.
In terms of the $1 million, that seems, if it seems excessive to you, when I first got into this about 10 weeks ago, I'm new to the insurance world and coming up to speed very quickly. I had the same thoughts, and that's actually a very standard amount for municipal insurance. We are self-insured up to $2 million. So anything above $2 million, up to a certain cap, we do have insurance on, but we are self-insured for anything up to that $2 million. So any claim, any tree branch that falls on a car, any, in this case, a picture falling, a sculpture falling, the city would actually be self-insured for that and actually pay cash for that. The liability fund is where that would come from. For long-term debt for the liability fund, it's actually in the red, or it's underfunded by $3.5 million. So we don't have the money to, be paying claims. We're very particular about where our exposure is, and those combined, and the policy, the special event policy, I think the base amount on that is $1 million. So, we have to be insured, and that's the base amount. That's kind of where the pricing comes in to your last point of, why would they do that? Well, they might already be insured, number one. Number two, it protects them as much as it protects the city. And say worst case a sculpture falls, we get sued for, $1.2 million. We find it's an issue with the artist's art. Theoretically, the city is going to turn around and try and recover that from the artist. So it protects them as much as it protects the city. And your question was why? Well, they're making a choice. Yes, it is a public benefit, but we have to protect everyone involved, and it's kind of It's their choice. So if they wanted to choose to do it, great. If not, that's their choice.
I understand the overall principle of this. I'm trying to be as practical as possible, forgetting about the theories and the bureaucratic things that we have in here. Practically, a painting, which might weigh about 2 or 3 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, with a frame maybe, what kind of damage do we expect that painting, if it falls, to cause? So that we can ask, what kind of injury do we expect realistically, practically, to cause, so that we will expect the artist to provide $1 million insurance?
On a hanging piece of art, probably little. On a sculpture that's heavy, on certain pieces of art that we've actually had in the city that had exposed electrical, you can do a lot of damage with exposed electrical. So it runs the gamut, and it would depend on the piece of art.
I also wanted to clarify, the cities that we researched that require the insurance, they also require $1 million liability insurance. So just to say, it's consistent, it's what's required. So if an artist is already displaying artwork in maybe one of the neighboring cities in a similar program, they've already experienced this bureaucratic policy, whatever you may call it, but this requirement is required, and also some of these other cities even add on an additional application fee, which we're not charging, so that would be the only cost to the artist.
I understand that. In my business, with my tenants and the buildings that I manage, I require a minimum of $1 to $2 million, sometimes $5 to $10 million, because that's a totally different business. People might fall and break their legs and whatever. I'm saying let's be practical and think about our specific situation here and what kind of damages or what kind of liabilities do we expect in here. To me, there isn't much. There might be some, but not much. But if it is going to burden the artists by these numbers, there is a good chance that nobody will want to pay that $500 or whatever the amount would be, maybe less. And if they don't pay that, then this whole concept and this whole process that we are going through might end up for nonsense. Because nobody wants to pay $500 insurance to play a piece of art which is about $5 or 10 pounds or 15 pounds worth. And we have our fixing, we have the way to display it. We said we will attach it to the wall in a way that it wouldn't fall, etc., etc., etc. So when we consider all of this, $500 for a painting, let's say, to be displayed. Mr. Martin, I was making a comment last time. The car that I drive is worth a lot more than a painting, a lot more. It is more than 3 tons. I drive it like a maniac, and my insurance is just about $20-some hundred a year. So to display, to put that car, which is more than $100,000 worth and more than 3 tons weight, to put with an art piece and ask the artist to pay $500, that's just, for me, is unconscionable.
Now, I understand this is only hanging art, and there will never be sculptures. There will never be anything other than, something hanging on the wall. Ever?
It is for overall art. We have the policy. Actually, we were just hoping and pushing to put the sculptures also into this policy. So it includes all kinds of visual and visual art.
The commission did request to include sculptures and facilities that could accommodate it, and Adams Square can accommodate sculptures, but that's closed to the public to walk into the space on a regular basis.
Tell how much it costs to insure the enclosed space.
Mr. Sheehan, please.
I understand, but this is very frustrating.
I understand as well, and that's why I said you're welcome, more than welcome to fill out a card and make any comments that you have. I'd like to do this in the process.
I think the comments section are closed, but if he wants to...
Mr. Sheehan, I think the comments section, because we've already started, the item is closed. So...
You guys want to have a way to deal with this, you have to have a discussion about it. And I apologize...
Mr. Sheehan...
Drag me out, but doggone it.
Mr. Sheehan... Mr. Sheehan, please...
That is stupid.
Mr. Sheehan, we cannot entertain your comments at this moment. Commissioner Deaver?
I have a question. If there were an opening that were occurring in an event, whether it was during hours at the when the facilities was open or afterward, that was sponsored by the artist, would the liability insurance then, would it be the city's liability insurance or the liability insurance for this installation that they have be covering that as well? So I'm wondering, is it just a painting falling on somebody's head that we're worried about, or are we worried about somebody coming in to view something and tripping over something and it was...
It could run the gamut of, bad things that could happen.
That are somehow related only specifically to the art exhibit?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there an opportunity to lower costs by looking at it as a program? So rather than one artist, I'm putting in one artwork, one artist, I'm putting in another artwork, and each one of those artists has to go out and spend $100, let's say, or $200 to do that, to look at it as each RFP where we have some sort of coverage that looks at the whole thing. And that might have been part of the analysis that we were provided, and I'm not recalling that, but it seems to me that it's somewhere in there's got to be a way of reducing it, and certainly with different types of insurers as well. But
One question might be, instead of asking each artist to provide separate insurance, maybe they can pool their resources together, buy just one coverage for different ones, and even share the costs, and that might break it down considerably. So what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying let's avoid insurance. I'm trying to say let's find ways not to burden the artists who are being nice enough to lend their artwork for us to display.
And if I may,
Yes,
if I recall, one of the things that came up, and I apologize too, I didn't go back and review all of my notes from this, but I know that one of the offers is that the commission could consider this of a value, and we can look at it in the context of funding that we can find for that and cover it for the artist, so that there wouldn't be any cost to the artist overall. I mean, we're talking about the fact that we need insurance, and I'm not going to argue that. It's a city. I deal with cities across the country, and I'm always amazed at the amount of insurance that's required for ridiculous things. So it is just what it is. We're not going to change that animal, but being able to find a way to be able to explain why the costs are there, and to be able to make the costs as low as possible, and be able to defensively do that is what's important to me.
If I may, Commissioner Deaver, with the research that we had done originally, the city could buy general liability coverage directly through our carrier, and that would be $75,000 to $100,000 annually, and it would be a $5,000 deductible. So if we were to take that amount and divide it by the number of artists you have annually, depending on the number of artists and the number of art that goes up, that rate will most probably be higher per artist than the individual if they were to purchase it individually, where it could cost up to, let's say, $500. So if the city was to insure all of our facilities and take that cost and divide it within the artists, the number of artists we have, of course that rate would vary depending on the number of artists we have, but that's probably going to cost more than the $500 if they were to put up one art through the year.
So, for instance, if there were a nonprofit, let's say, that was I don't want to say fiscally responsible, but that were somehow heading up, like whether it's an existing organization or a new nonprofit that says, I want to administer this public art process for the artists in the community through the city as a partner, and they secured some sort of insurance for the overall program, is that potentially cheaper? Or are we still looking at $100,000 because we're looking at whole facilities? Because to me, it's like one art program as opposed to 10 different ones.
Don't know that we've actually looked into an outside party paying for the coverage, and I don't know if it would be the $75 to $100. It's just an outside party would pay for that cost. I'm sure we can look into that, and
an amount that I can tell you, for example, for the GATE program, we required Praxis, the consultant that was in charge of managing the program, to get that insurance, and overall they asked the artists to sign the waiver, but they still had to provide that liability insurance. And I believe through theirs, it was actually an insurance that they already have. It was approximately $3,500 for their policy, but they're already an existing business that has an insurance. They just had to add the city is insured for the same amount for the same reasons. Again, I'm not sure if a nonprofit or another group came in, if it would be much higher or much lower, but also just to kind of go off of what you said, the question isn't whether or not we should require the insurance or not. It's something that is required, but as Commissioner Deaver said, that if the commission doesn't want to burden the artists with the cost, then you could consider including a portion of the general fund budget that the commission has towards covering that insurance cost. So we can discuss that further as we're developing our work plan. I think it's somewhat two separate issues. One is the policy. If you're happy with it, with the comments you've made, we can approve it today. And then in terms of the cost, we can discuss whether it's going to be passed on to the artist or if there's a way for the cost to be paid for through the commission budget as we develop the work plan and then when it's presented to the council for their approval.
Any further comments from my colleagues? Oh, Commissioner Lee, you did have your hand up about 20 minutes ago. I'm not kidding.
Okay. If I may, just briefly, and I got here during the middle of this item, and so I apologize. But if the gentleman wants to speak and he hasn't been given an opportunity to speak on this item, you should probably give him a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. It's up to you to speak on it before you take your final action, unless you've already done that. But I don't.
No, actually, we have not.
Yeah.
No, let's.
Yes, let's do that. Mr. Sheehan, city attorney has given us the ability.
Fill up a card also.
Yes.
So this means, thankfully, and thank you, that the rules are the rules for a reason, and then when the rules start to wag us around, we need to take control of them and to figure out a way to not let them do bad things to us. People don't appreciate that artists work to make stuff either for their own pleasure or for sale. I'm an artist that makes stuff for myself. When I did the balloon project in the gas station in 2008, a week before it was time to put it in, they said, "Oh, you have insurance?" And I said, "Oh, no, do I have to have insurance?" And so my budget trebled with the balloons that I stuffed into the gas station. And then 4 years go by, and I'm called for a meeting, and I get to coordinate something for the gas station again, the Words of American Patriots, the July 4th project. And thanks to the wonderfulness of Teresa and Jess Duran and others who came forward, you got 60 artists who donated their work to the space. But we had to have it 60 days. The insurance would only be covered for 60 days. And it was going to cost so much money for the insurance. And Teresa, God bless her, tried to explain to me why the umbrella policy that covers the people who stumble and fall outside the gas station, why that policy wouldn't cover what might happen inside the locked gas station. And so I screamed and hollered, which I'm evidently prone to do. And the city, thanks to the city, picked up the insurance policy that was completely unnecessary. And so with all of this stuff that's going on, expecting artists to make work, make it available to the benefit of the community, and have to pay to do it, it's a real slap in the face. And I'm here to stand in front of you to say that I will no longer participate in a proposition that makes me have to go out of pocket, which I did for, I think I complained to you about having been able to pay off my house if my hours have been paid for doing the July 4th project. But I can't participate in something where artists are literally taken advantage of and made to pay to play. The city should appreciate the wonderfulness of the diversity that we have here. And you're talking about, what's suitable for somebody. There's a sculpture across the street that offends me to the soul, whose genitals have been removed, and it's really a kitschy, stupid sculpture. So I'm not going to play anymore until you guys come around and figure out a way to appreciate the work that artists do. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
And I would apologize for getting mad before, but I won't.
That's acceptable too.
Thank you. My only comment about the insurance, I think it's absolutely silly to expect artists to pay for stuff that they're donating. I mean, you don't go to the Red Cross and donate stuff and then pay out of your pocket for them to store it. You know, it just doesn't make sense. It's silly to me. But I know we have to do it. So then it comes to how are we going to pay for it. What I think what I would like to see as a solution is maybe we should have some kind of application fee, nominal. I'm talking about maybe $10, $20 at the most. But the actual insurance then is taken from our general fund. That's what I would like to see. Because unfortunately there's cost to this, and I mean, either we burden the artist a lot or a little, I guess, at this point. I would love to see the artists just give us their work and just set it up and then go there and pick it up. That's what I would like to see. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And it's sad. It's sad, but it's a bureaucratic system, and we just have to play ball. I mean, that's quite frankly what it is. I mean, I don't like it. I hate it. I'm an artist. If somebody said, "Hey, Armand, we want to premiere a work of yours, but you have to pay us a lot of money because we have to get the players for it," I said, "Then what do I need them for? I just go do it myself." But so it is what it is, Mr. Sheehan. I understand your concerns and I agree with you for the most part. So just because I asked you not to speak up was not because I didn't necessarily agree with you. It's just part of the procedure. Again, we have to play ball. That's just what it is. So that's my 2 cents on how we solve the problem. We have some kind of nominal fee, and then we take care of the insurance. Because I would hate to burden an artist. $500 is a lot of money for an artist nowadays. They can go buy supplies with that $500, and acrylic paint is not cheap nowadays. I don't know how many of you know about how much that costs, but it's very expensive. I mean, to create one artwork, you're looking at a few $100s just for the paint itself. So I think it's silly, but we have to do it, so let's do it. Let's put it out of our own pockets.
I guess we need a motion, but when I bring back, as we're developing the work plan, we'll discuss the general fund budget that you have, very little amount that there is, and I think we learned today that a lot of budgets were cut, so we've lost a little bit more money, but I'll bring that back to you. Cindy and I will bring it, and we'll highlight some of the priorities and figure out what has to be paid out of general fund. But I think we do need a motion approving the policy with the changes and the comments that you made today, and then we can discuss the work, how this fits into the work plan, the cost of the insurance when we bring that up in December or January.
Commissioner Gregorian?
Before the motion, we discussed many things that we are going to incorporate, but there are 2 issues that are still point of contention. One was for all ages, and the other one was insurance. Right. How are we going to address that before the motion is made?
I think the city attorney can address both of these, but I think the insurance section doesn't really need to change because it's still required. It's just going to be a matter of who's paying for it. Am I right?
Well, correct. And my suggestion is we need the insurance. But it looks like staff still, and the commission wants the staff obviously to look at funding options for it, and staff, we think there's probably some options. So my strong recommendation is that you adopt it with the insurance requirement, but with the same notation, the staff is going to continue to pursue options for actually funding. The insurance needs to be provided, but staff then can go and see what other funding sources there are. And then as far as the suitable for all language, I mean, the commission will have to vote on that. My recommendation is to be included, but someone can make a motion with that language included, and if it doesn't pass, then someone can make a motion without it included. So that's my suggestion on that.
The only question that I had was that in terms of the insurance, $1 million is what we have to purchase. That there's no.
Again, that's standard. It's an industry standard.
Okay, that's okay. I'm sorry, I have just a funny question. It's an industry standard. Can we change the industry standard? I mean,
I'd have to defer to Marble, but again,
I don't mean to, sound like a,
It's just sort of standard risk management. and I understand, I've gotten this in other areas of the city where it's like, why are we requiring this? And I required it for the food trucks that came to the city, which seemed excessive too. But again, you're sort of planning for the unplannable, and that's the reason why it's at that number. And you can have a situation where 2 or 3 people are hurt at an incident, at an event, and all of a sudden you're right into the cap. So it does seem like a lot, obviously, it's just one person getting hit by a painting, but you're really planning for something that you can't think about at the moment.
I mean, you have to imagine what's going on through my mind when you say hit by a painting. I mean, if you take a baseball pitching machine and you put a 10 by 10 in there, probably not going to do a lot of damage. I mean, that's literally the picture I had. I mean,
But again, it's not just being hit by the painting. Something else happening at an event where somebody's art has been put up. Yeah,
but see, the funny thing also is that we've put a cap on the maximum that a painting should be worth, which is $5,000. So that doesn't make sense either. For a $5,000 painting, we're insuring up to $1 million. Like we've taken if for any artwork, I'm seeing a shaking head from the audience, but I don't know how to quite respond to that. But I'm going to. I'm going to keep going. It's like taking something that I drew on a piece of paper, like during a commission meeting, and then like insuring it for making it into Picasso. It's like in terms just the numbers. It's alarming to me. Like $1 million. I mean, I would like to challenge the industry standard because I don't. And for as much as I see Commissioner Lee waving at me, I don't know how to respond to that either. No, I'm kidding. Commissioner Lee, go ahead and make your comment.
You know what? Here's a really realistic scenario for you. The emblem right there, you can consider that artwork. You're talking about a hallway in a recreation center. I see 10 teenagers chasing themselves down the hallway, bumping into that thing. For some reason, it falls on one kid's head. That thing could be 10 pounds, 15 pounds. Now, any artwork, you remember, you're not limiting it. It could be a metal piece, whatever. If that thing fell on one kid's head, it can do some damage. Now, doctor's bills, you're talking $500,000 just going in the doctor's office. Now, figuring you 5 kids running across, hits one kid's head, it's going to bounce. It's like a football. It's going to bounce on another kid's head, or it could be 2 or 3 heads. You're talking $1 million plus right there.
Commissioner Lee.
And that's a realistic, because you're talking about a hallway in a rec center.
Commissioner Lee, I'm sorry. Let me ask you a question. I'm not really clear. Are you telling that 10 kids running around and destroying an artwork or making the artwork to fall on one of their heads is the responsibility of the artist?
You're having the insurance cover a situation that happens as a result of the display of
the insurance will definitely cover, but that's not the artist's fault that 10 kids do not behave properly.
What you're doing is it's risk shifting, and you're saying you're having an event. People are coming to a public place because of the display of this art, and the city wants to be protected in the event that there is an incident as a result of that display. Again, my suggestion is that we stay with the $1 million, because it is pretty industry standard. Not only in the industry, the insurance industry, but as Ms. Vartanian outlined, all the other cities pretty much require the same thing. So in terms of the burden, I think it's something that we can. And again, the approach that should be taken is to see if we can find other sources of funding if they're available.
Again, like I said, I'm not going to burden the artists. So if the city as a whole wants to make this happen, then the city as a whole should figure out how to pay for it. Simple as that. I'm not going to burden the artists. That's silly.
I absolutely agree with that, but I think we still have to have insurance, and the city should somehow cover it.
Fine with me. Let's get $2 million. As long as the city's paying for it and the artists don't have to pay for it, fine with me. Simple as that. I don't know. All right, so somebody has to make a motion, and there's some language that needs to be clarified, so I don't know who's going to do that.
So the first motion is, let's make sure that we get proper insurance for everything paid or underwritten by the city. That's the first motion.
Well, we're talking about the policy here.
The policy as a whole.
If I may. Again, I think because the decisions of funding have to rest with staff going and finding the funding, and then ultimately the city council approving it. In terms of the policy, should be required. And again, if by motion the commission wants to direct the staff to find additional funding sources, then it can do that.
Well, let's make the motion that way then.
Okay.
Okay, there needs to be a second.
I'm sorry, what is the motion?
The motion is that let's direct staff to find sources for proper and adequate insurance for these displays. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, and again, it's subject to ultimately the council's funding decisions.
I think we would need to approve the motion, make a motion to approve the policy, correct, first, and then direct
So
staff
just
to find.
approve the policy with the insurance and the language regarding suitability for children, and then make a separate motion directing staff to find funding sources to pay for the insurance.
So we did it kind of backwards.
But before that, for the suitability of all ages, I wanted to make a motion to remove that one sentence from the policy. I would like to see, the area where it says artwork guidelines, the first paragraph, the third line, therefore the artwork must be suitable for all ages. I would like that to make a motion to remove that sentence completely from the policy.
Okay, there needs to be a second. Okay, it doesn't look like there's a second, so the
if there is no second,
motion
the motion
dies out.
fails.
Somebody can make
Yes.
somebody can make another motion.
So I move to approve the policy with the changes discussed, with the exception of the one that just went down.
Okay.
Not very
So
eloquent,
basically the
but
way it stands.
as it stands.
Okay. There needs to be a second of that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Deaver,
Yes.
Gregorian,
Before my vote, I want to say that overall, this is a really good policy, and although I have a couple of reservations that I made it very clear in here, I'm going to enthusiastically vote for yes for it.
Lee,
Yes.
Chairperson Kavanian.
Yes. Okay, and then someone needs to make the motion of directing staff. So I'm kind of feeding that.
If you want, I could restate it, and someone could just move it.
Sounds good.
Can I have
I think the motion would be to direct staff to seek alternate funding sources for the insurance, subject to funding availability and council approval.
Okay. So somebody needs to move
I make that motion then.
Okay. There needs to be a second. Or Commissioner Deaver, do you have a question?
I just have a clarification. Is that indeed broad enough to say whether we were looking at some funding that was coming in through the Arts Commission, or if it's general fund, or it's an outside funder? Is that broad enough to look at all different options? And
I think it was as broad as possible,
Okay.
as whatever the staff can locate.
Whatever staff can find. Sofas, underneath those. Okay, and there needs to be a second to that motion.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Deaver,
Yes.
Gregorian,
Yes.
Lee,
I abstain.
Chairperson Kavanian.
Yes. Okay, next item, please.
At B, reports information only. Report on Arts and Culture Commission retreat.
On October 27th, the commission held a retreat to discuss and prioritize the strategic direction of the commission and to develop an arts and cultural plan for the city. This is as a result of the recent transfer of the commission to Library, Arts and Culture Department, as well as some of the strategic directions for the commission. This plan will create a comprehensive vision of the city's support for the arts and culture to be implemented over the next 5 years. And essentially, it just sets the goals and priorities for the city to best help arts and cultural life of Glendale to thrive. And the plan will serve as a foundation for for developing a work plan and a budget for the Arts and Culture Commission in the coming years. So within the next couple of months, you will be reviewing the Arts and Cultural Plan, and then after that, developing a work plan that's consistent with the vision that we've put forward. What we did is staff just developed just a summary report of some of the topics which were discussed and identified during the retreat. And just to go through it quickly, since we do have members of the community here and watching, we discussed broad long-term goals for the 5 years, for the next 5 years for arts and culture in Glendale. We also identified some strategic priorities, programs, and projects that the commission has achieved in the past or they'd like to continue. The commission also identified community partners and resources, as well as some funding options, as well as discussing some of the public art priorities. And some of the goals that the commission identified that are consistent with the goals that were originally listed in the strategic plan that was developed in 1996, as well as the ordinance establishing the Arts and Cultural Commission. And this essentially includes raising the visibility of arts and culture in Glendale, using arts to encourage community pride, encouraging visitor attraction and economic development using arts and culture, growing and supporting Glendale's identity as an innovative and creative community, advancing the role of arts in city government, which we're accomplishing with this policy today, and addressing social and cultural barriers through the arts. The commission identified some of their public art priorities. We had identified 6 different types of public art, including, cultural programming, permanent art, performing arts, temporary art, cultural art event, and murals and beautification. The commission identified temporary art, performing art, and cultural and a signature cultural art event as their priorities. So we'll be taking that into consideration as we develop the plan as well as the work plan. Some of the funding options that were identified include the Arts and Culture Commission's General Fund, the Urban Art Fund, which could be used to achieve some of the strategic priorities, fundraising through events, grants that are available through LA County Arts Commission as well as other agencies, and donations. The community partners and resources that were identified, these include our organizations and businesses, will also help achieve these goals because essentially, most of these businesses and organizations, along with the commission, just want to raise the visibility of arts and encourage a lot of that community pride and visitor attraction. And then on the second page of the report, you'll see a very long list of the priorities as well as programs and projects identified by the commission. This was really a laundry list that we did prepare. We didn't get into the discussion of it. I just wanted to put it on paper again. As you'll see, there's some overlap. So what staff's doing right now is just looking to see where that overlap is in terms of the programs and projects, as well as the strategic priorities, and kind of matching what some of your highest priorities were. Remember, we did the sticker exercise. You had to pick your top 10 priorities for each of these sections. And so what we'll do is we'll look and see where that crossover is and see where your priorities are, as well as some programs and projects that you'd like to continue. Some of that will be included in the cultural plan that we anticipate bringing in December. And then after that, we'll use that as the platform to develop the work plan. And we'll be developing a work plan for 18 months, so 2013 to 2014, since we'll have to, get started on that at the beginning of the year. And we may not be able to accomplish that much in this first fiscal year in terms of, the projects and the programs, but you're undertaking one of the most important things, which is setting that foundation for the vision of arts and culture for the next 5 years. So this is just an informational report, an update. A couple of commissioners came up with additional, strategic priorities or programs and projects. You're more than welcome to email me once I get all of that information. I can send an updated list to the commission just so you can see it one more time. And then, as I mentioned, I anticipate bringing a draft arts and cultural plan in December for you to review and discuss.
Are there any questions?
Just one addition there, that although I looked at both those documents, it didn't really reflect what I had in mind in the retreat. I would like to add that with the if it's okay. I would like to see the Arts and Culture Commission, since we have a new advisory role, etc., to help participate and be consulted in all legislation and drawing of ordinances in the city, and every other department in the city that has any decisions regarding any art-related issues, I would like to be participant and part of the decision-making process. And, one of the, for instance, if there is a GATE program, which there is not anymore, at the redevelopment agency, which is not anymore, I would like to see the Arts and Culture Commission to be consulted and be actively participating in those kind of programs also. And if there is a new legislature or ordinance drawn up, I would like to be part of that, participating in the drawing up and consulted with. So it's not as clear in this as I'm trying to make. But other than that, I think this is a phenomenal job, and you did a good job. And in the retreat, we accomplished a lot. It was a very good retreat, and in a very short time, everybody was very well prepared. We came in there, and I'm really hoping that we will see the fruits of that in a very near future.
Oh, I did forget, we do have a card. Elise Kalfayan.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Elise Kalfayan. I'm a resident of Glendale, and I am the president of the Friends of the Glendale Public Library. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for your efforts in putting together all of these ideas, strategic priorities and programs and projects. And I wanted to let you know that the Friends of the Library are one of your community partners and organizations you can reach out to. And I see a lot of opportunities for collaboration here, since we host and promote cultural and literary events. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your wonderful comment. Any other questions from my colleagues? Again, I thought job well done. I think we were all happy and pleased with the way staff ran the retreat itself, and with with this fairly expansive report back with all of our ideas. I guess it was kind of easy since we had to put stickers on the board.
For clarification, does this list, is this the full list or is this the stickered list?
This is the stickered list. Thank you for bringing that up. As I mentioned, a couple of commissioners did email. Those are not reflected on this list. So after, if as you're driving home, then you get an idea, send me an email, and I hope on Monday, you send me an email by Monday, and I will send you the full list with all of the last minute additions, so you can see what some of the newer ideas are.
And just one comment. I thank you for administering this process for sure, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it rolls out into the next form, particularly for my brain, because I look at things like the priorities, and some of them look like programs, and some of the programs look like priorities. So I think you've got a pretty big job ahead in terms of really whittling that down and making some sense of it. I think even amongst ourselves, we probably have different ideas of what some of these things mean. So it'll be interesting moving forward.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item 6, Commission staff comments.
Okay. I don't know, again, which everybody leans back and Razmik appears out of everybody leaning back. So, would you like to start, Commissioner Gregorian?
Now that I don't have much to say, you are the first
I don't know.
No, actually, as a very brief comment or report, the Glendale Arts Board met last Tuesday morning, and I participated as the liaison between the Arts and Culture Commission and the Glendale Arts. It was a very good meeting. Apparently, they are working. They had some good news. Miss Nina Crow was here for some of the programs, and as you know, some of the budgeting issues and the building issues and the redevelopment agency issues, they are still under the works, and we are waiting for the state to tell us where we stand and what we do. So it is a work in progress, but there is a lot of very good things happening with Glendale Arts also, and hopefully in due course we will know and we will hear a lot of good news. Hopefully by next April or May, when the state decides how they want to handle the properties that were taken away from the redevelopment agency and given to the successor agency, hopefully we will know what it stands. And they are trying to get into a fundraising. Some of the funds are approved for the expansion of Alex Theater and all the works that were planned. So there is a lot of very good news happening. I'm trying to be brief, and I was hoping that Nina or somebody else would give us that report, but hopefully when the news become more available, we will hear a lot of good news regarding Alex Theater. And just one little note, the 4 of the galleries in Glendale in the next 2 weeks are having new exhibitions opened. Arame Gallery, Megarchian Gallery, Silvana Gallery, and Anzo Gallery. I don't really have the exact dates and the artists with me, but hopefully the chair will fill us up on this. But I've seen at least 3 of them, Arame, Megarchian, and Silvana. They are fabulous. So I encourage the public to attend and to enjoy and to purchase some of this artwork.
Any other comments?
Just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And there's, I think, at least for me, a lot to be thankful for.
Okay. I have a few items. First of all, Mr. Sheehan, do not forget to fill out a card for the item 5A. Just saying, so that we make sure everything. Another card? Yeah, you just have to fill out another card. But we'll help you out after the meeting if you want to wait for another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so I'll start from the ones that are more immediate. Tomorrow night, from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m., there is an exhibition at the Hollywood Productions building on the rooftop. The address there is 225 East Broadway, Suite 310. In Glendale, of course, on the corner of Broadway and Louise. And the artist's name is Pharaoh. He's actually a relative of mine. It's kind of funny. He's actually a really, really wonderful artist. He uses lots of colors. It's very almost geometric art in a sense, but very playful. The next event is the Lark Musical Society is putting on a choir concert with their newly formed Gerard Choir, which I actually sang for not too long ago, with, of course, Vacha Barsumyan conducting. There's 2 concerts. The first concert is Sunday, November 18th, this coming Sunday at 2 o'clock at St. Mark's Episcopal Church here in Glendale. I think that's on Maryland, is it not?
No, it's on Brand. I think
it's on
corner
Brand.
of
You're
Brand
right.
and Dryden.
Right, exactly. And the second concert, including this, which is the same repertoire of Bach and Komitas, is on November 25th at 6 p.m. In the same location. It's 1020 North Brand Boulevard in Glendale. And you can call them for ticket inquiries, 818-500-9997. This is, again, Lark. And actually in their brochure, there's a picture of the choir, and I'm in it. I just realized that. There it is, all the way in the end. And finally, Anzo Gallery on November 30th is presenting a works. I think Kalust Kudel's work is there, and also Paul Kemkemian's work is going to be. I think it's a maritime theme. I think it's has to do with the sea and so forth. And that's on November 30th again. And Anzo Gallery is located on Colorado.
No.
I'm sorry, Central. Am I thinking? It started with the C.
1025 South Central Avenue.
There you go. Commissioner Gregorian is now working for MapQuest.
No.
Only in Glendale.
I've been there so many times.
He's the Glendale.
I'm good with numbers, as you know.
Okay, and that sums it up for me, I guess. Trying to think of. I'm sorry. Oh, that's right. Thank you. See, What would I do without? I'm very thankful for my colleagues. Also, I just wanted to make there was an email sent out today, and that comes from the Valley Nonprofit Resources Organization, which is also working with Glendale Arts to co-sponsor an event, and they were actually curious if we were also interested in helping them co-sponsor an event. And I'm going to agendize this item for our next meeting, where we'll get further details. And they've been, this organization, Valley Nonprofit Resources, has been working in Glendale since about 2006. So I guess they've been working with organizations in Glendale. So we will see that coming up at our next month's agenda. Okay, and that sums it up for me. So we will go to the next item.
Item 7, written communications.
I'm guessing we don't have any. Okay. And, of course, last item is adjournment. Have a happy Thanksgiving.